Welcome to Creative 10 channel. Today we want to sew a fleece house for guinea pig or other small pets. We did a video several years ago in the Picture Healer channel, and I just want to do an updated video to make it more clear and answer some questions. And this one is a variation of that. Basically, you have a piece with an opening circle, and then the other part, it can be either one piece that's in a circular shape with a rectangle button like this one, or you can have two rounded pieces, or you can even make it into a square shape with several pieces. And the constructions are all very similar. The inside piece and outside piece, you can use the same fleece or different pattern of the fleece. Another material is the batting. It's to sandwich between the two layers of fleeces, or any type of fabric that can make it stand up a little bit more and keep the shape more. You don't need a lot. You can find it in most craft stores in the US. First, we talk about size. For an adult guinea pig, it can actually get pretty big. This one is about 8 or 9 inches for the front piece, and you can make it wider, maybe 10 inches, but the design is up to you. Just remember, the guinea pig grow up very fast. If you got a baby, you might want to consider making bigger size because they grow up really fast. The bottom piece is about the same, maybe 8 inch by 10 inches, and you have to consider the seam allowance, so maybe add 1 more inch to that. I'm going to do the circular shape like the original video, so I have a circular piece on top and 1 circular piece in the bottom and a long piece all the way around. And one quick way to draw the circle is to measure the distance you like. Just draw some dots at the edge. I want it 10 inches, so I have dots, and you can have as many dots as you want. So from the circle point, you'll be 5 inches and 5 inches. And of course, you can make it bigger or smaller. And then we just connect the dots. Then I cut up the pattern and just trace it around the edges, and we are ready to cut. And you can use this one as a sewing line and add a trim, or you can use this as a cutting line. The sewing line can be 1/2 inch in, so the final product will be a little bit smaller. And because my guinea pig is pretty big, I'm going to leave some seam allowance outside this line. So I'm going to cut it a little bit bigger than that line. And I will need 4 pieces of that. Next, we want to measure the long side of the rectangle piece. It's about the outer edge of the circular piece. So for the cut one, I have about 34 inches. This one is with the seam allowance. So I'm going to use this number. And for the height of the house, I want to keep it around 10 inches. That's including seam allowance. So after it's done, you'll probably be 9 or 8 inches. And now we just have to cut 2 pieces of fleece. You can use 2 different fleece, one for the outside, one for the inside, or you can use the same one. I'm just going to use the same one right now. And then we cut the batting of the same size. Some batting are thinner, some are thicker. Mine is a little bit thin and flimsy, so I might need to use 2 layers. And I find the traditional cotton batting keeps the shape better than the polyester batting, but you use what you can find. Now we cut all the pieces, including the batting and the outside piece. We can start sewing. We will start with sewing the hole in the center, and we can decide how big of the hole you want. I have around 7 inches, so each side is 3.5, 3.5, and you can mark it with some dots and then connect the dots to make the circular shape. Now I'm going to place layers correctly. When we are sewing, a lot of times we have the right side of the fabric facing each other, so we are facing the back side. And it's the same here, but we just have another layer, so we treat the batting layer the same as the second layer. So that's the front side facing each other. And this layer, you can be on top or in the bottom, but because now we want to draw the circle, so I leave the batting in the bottom. And we just pick around the center of the long rectangle and trace the circle opening we want to sew. Now we see the tracing line. We are ready to sew over this line without leaving any opening. We'll just sew over the whole circle. And to make things easier, you can put clips on the outside or pins to keep the whole thing in place. And this is the tricky part because we want to sew the circle and then cut open the center and flip it inside out. Now we make sure the fabric, the right side is facing each other and the batting can be in the bottom. And this is secured, so we will sew the outline of the circle. I use my Singer 201 sewing machine, just straight stitch, and I try to keep the stitch length longer so it will look nicer. And we just keep going full circle and overlap a few stitches or back stitch a few stitches so it's secure. Now that's what it looks like. This is the back side. And the next step, we just need to cut out the center and just leave a little seam allowance, maybe 1/2 inch or 3/8 of an inch. That's about 1 centimeter. And it's easier just cut a hole, or you can fold in half and cut like that to make a hole first and then cut through the center. Like that. We just keep cutting for the circle. Or you can cut from the front side, it's the same. That's after the cutout. Next, we can clip a few lines inside the curves, so when we turn it inside out, it will be easier. Just a short lines, make sure you don't cut the thread. After cutting some of the lines, we are ready to turn it around. Since we have the two fabric with the right side facing, and one of them has the batting side, it's easier just pick the side without the batting and then move it through the hole to the other side. And this is the magical part. You just move the first layer going through the hole. Now you can see the nice edge around the circle. And the batting is sandwiched in between. We just hide the sewing lines inside. And then we place some clips, and then we are going to sew around the opening just to secure it. Okay, now we have the nice finish for the opening. The next step is to connect the end of this rectangle piece so it will become a circle. And I want to sew this first so I can hide the raw edge in between the two layers. So it will be like that. And we sew a line. And then we do the same on the other side. We can pull the other two pieces end to end and then sew another line. I put some pin at the end, and this is the line I'm going to sew. And of course leave some seam allowance, maybe 1/2 inch. And we have the round opening in the middle. I know it looks confusing, but it's pretty straightforward. Once we keep going, you will see. When you are sewing this side with batting on the top, you have to be careful it doesn't get caught. Now we sew the line on both short ends. Here we can just flip it, find where the opening is. Now we have a circular tube. This is the part we just saw. Now that's what it looks like. If we look from the top, it can be a tube. Next, I'm going to sew a line on the top and a line near the bottom edge, and then cut off any extra fabric on the top and the bottom. One line here on the top, one here. I like to pin it first, and if some fabric sticks out, you can cut it out first before you sew. Now that's after sewing the line on the top and bottom. And I also trim a little bit of the extra fabric so it looks flat on the top and on the bottom. And next we are going to work with circles. And similar to before, we want the right side facing. For me, this is the right side, and this is another right side. You can place the batting on top or bottom. If your fleece is thick enough, you don't really need the batting for the top and bottom of the guinea pig house. And I'm going to sew around the outline, leaving a few inches, maybe 2 or 3 inches opening, and then we will turn it inside out from there. That's after sewing and leaving an opening. I'm going to trim off the extra fabric, and then I will snip the curve so it's easier to turn, just like before. After trimming, we can just flip inside out. Between the two pieces of fleece, we just flip the fabric inside out. So the right side of the fabric is facing outside. And now we can tuck the opening in a little bit and sew it together. So we close the opening and try to still keep the curve shape, just top stitch. And I will continue top stitch around the edges so it will look nicer. Now we sew the outline of the circle. We can do the same thing for the second one. Now here is the last part to place the round disc shape, one on the top, one in the bottom. We are going to just leave the edges and then we turn it inside out so you don't see the seam. So you have to decide which side you want to be the outside and turn the inside out. So now this part will become the inside after I flip it. And I just pin the piece together, and I'm going to sew a line all the way, all through the edges, just one line, and it's the same on the other side. This part can be tricky because some sewing machine cannot handle the thickness. You have to test your sewing machine. And I'm using the old single straight stitch machine. Those machines usually have no problem sewing through thick fabric. If it doesn't work with your machine, you can always hand sew this part. This is the last part of the sewing. So now it's pinned and the wrong side facing out, and we are ready to sew. Now we finish all the sewing on the top and bottom. The only thing left is to turn it inside out. If you like this video, please let me know and I can make more. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.